employed? How do you do a cash flow map? So I basically took opportunities of anything I could get hold of for free or a decent price of how to do it. Yeah. I was on that. And then using the existing contacts that we had in Sheffield in terms of the youth leadership, sort of working with those clients, providing them with training programs. But it was really interesting because I think there'd not long since been a change of government, or funding for youth services was slowly starting to dry up, and people were not interested in putting on as much extracurricular stuff. Yeah. And early on in the business, I'd not thought, oh, of course, you need lots of different income streams, different customers. I kind of got this one market that suddenly ended, and I went, oh no, what am I going to do? So I then had to think, okay, what is it I offer? Who else might want this? And then kind of repackage and get out there and start working with charities, start working in the university sector, because they've still got students, young people, which was my speciality at the time. And what I've really liked actually is that although I kind of have this umbrella, right, I provide leadership training mostly for young people. Anybody who wants soft skills training from any group will kind of do for me. If you're interested in change and development, let's give it a go. So sort of 2 or 3 years in, a friend of a friend said, oh, I'm doing this program for refugees and could do with a session on just an introduction to leadership. Do you want to have a go at it? And I've not worked with refugees. I don't know how it will work, but we can see. And it turns out people are just people, whether you're corporate. I do workshops now for people who are, experienced corporate professionals. I still do stuff with children, sort of age 5. And I do the same sort of content pitched at a different level. And it's really nice having so many broad groups that I've worked with, because you can see, okay, well, how do you approach that versus them? And interestingly, children are far better at conflict resolution than adults.
Oh, it doesn't surprise me. Children are great. I've said this before because, we always say, oh, I wish I was a kid again, because they see everything straightforward. They haven't got stresses of life. If you like something, you like something. If you don't, you don't. Black and white. Everything's just nice and, and they're fantastic, aren't they? They're like a blank canvas. Whereas once you're an adult,
they just kind of cut through all the social assumptions all the bullshit that hold us back. They just go like, well, why can't we do it this way? Fair play to you.
And what interests me as well about your company, because we talk about leadership sometimes on the podcast, and leadership's a bit of a funny one, because say if you're in a group and some people will try and be a leader, but you sort of almost have to become a leader or gain respect, but yours is self-leadership. So tell me, is that sort of making that person more of a leader in their own life, more confident, more, do you see what I mean? Is that what it's all about?
Yeah. So, it's about that. I do group leadership as well, but I wanted to distance myself from leadership and management. I find management a bit of a dirty word, and it can be done very well, but there's some people I went to a business networking event a couple of weeks back, and fair enough, everybody wants to do things their own way. But they were talking about, over lockdown, we were losing profits. And then we realised the best thing to do was just to fire half the staff. And now we're back. And I'm thinking, okay, from a business management point of view, if that's your bottom line, okay. But from me, I'm very much into the emotional intelligence side of leadership. And like that's relationships, that's people. And to me, them being expendable, or at least maybe more of a process went on. They didn't tell me the full story, but I found that didn't sit right. Yeah. So when I know what you mean from that. Just quickly, is that when you work for a company, you'll have HR. We want to make sure you're okay. We want to make sure all your needs are met. Well, but you have a problem and you can't come in, or there's an issue with your work.
then the business is always king. And they won't tell you that, but it will, because the company has to make money, which I totally understand. But you do, you know, HR always makes me laugh. Everywhere I've always worked, HR will look after your needs. And then they'll walk off and speak to the manager, and the manager says, you know, it's always that. It's dirty, isn't it? It's not. It's just makes you feel.
And each company's different, and some people are fantastic. Like Simon Sinek tells loads of stories about companies where, okay, we're struggling. Will everyone move to a 4-day week rather than us firing anybody? Let's all reduce capacity till we're back up. So that some people do it in really innovative and beautiful ways that look after people, but for others, leadership is seen as synonymous with management. So I wanted to talk more about self-leadership in the sense that if you walk into a room full of people and say, right, who wants to be a leader? Only a certain group are going to put their hands up, and it's probably going to be the extroverts, the people who've got business and politics on their mind. And there's a whole group of people who would make fantastic leaders, but don't throw their hat in the ring because they think, I have to be a certain way, I'm not charismatic enough. Or maybe they think, well, it's a masculine role. Or maybe they think you need to be a particular age. Or, you know, there's certain barriers that people perceive. And so what I do with self-leadership is say, look, let's work on you leading your own life effectively. If you do that, you are naturally going to be a role model for others. If you want to then be a leader, you're well equipped. But if you just want to keep, you know, doing whatever you're doing in your life, at least you're going to bring your best self to the table. And it kind of fits into so Daniel Goleman is a thought leader in the leadership world, and he talks about emotional intelligence as a key for leadership. And he breaks it down into a hierarchy of 4 parts. He says, really, a good leader needs self-awareness, which is, okay, what's going on inside me? And self-management. So now that I know what's going on, what am I going to do about it? Then you need social awareness, which is, you know, can I empathize with other people? Can I listen? Do I know what's going on with them and my wider organization? And then the 4th level is relationship management. And that's your leadership level, where you're being influential, charismatic, team building, solving problems. And so many people, when they're talking about leadership training, they want to jump straight into step 4 of how do I get other people to do what I want them to do? And they've skipped 3 whole levels. So I really focus, although I do stuff on how do you manage teams, what communication patterns are there, what are the different theories as to how to lead, how do you build trust. So I've got all of that content, but it's all underpinned with, okay, but as you're doing that, what insecurities are you bringing to the table? What strengths? What's your personality type? And how does that influence the way you operate in a room? And when you do that kind of stuff first, it means that people don't worry so much about, oh, I want them to do this thing. They'll say, right, I'm going to behave this way because I'm going to create a culture that permeates out to other people. And by starting with that really bottom-up approach, you get a much more authentic change in the individual and the people around them. That's my theory anyway. That's the way that I
like that. I like that thinking, and I like those 4, because I think a natural leader doesn't think of themselves as a leader. They just do these things naturally. Being aware of yourself, being aware of how you feel, because some people, if they've got an ego, they don't like to feel weak. You know, they might feel weak inside, but they're like, I haven't got any weaknesses, I'm leading the team. And I find with some of the best leaders I've worked with, and to be fair, it's not that many. There's, you know, not many great leaders that I've worked with, is they're approachable, you respect them straight away, they've got no ego, and they're very self-aware. So those 4 are pretty much spot on. And I think as well, when you get a person that's not a natural leader, I think it must be a great thing for you when they sort of come into that role, gain confidence. That must be really fulfilling for you.
Absolutely. And I talk about, I'm a bit uncomfortable with the idea of a natural leader because there's so many different ways to lead. You know, nobody's born being ready to do it. You learn it along the way. And so, yeah, when I work with rooms full of people where those who would have said at the beginning, no, I'm not a leader, I'm just here for some skills. But then as they get going, they realize, oh, I can lead. I just lead in this way. And you start seeing them not take charge of the group, because that gives the wrong message, but they take the leadership position and they do it in their style, and they own it, and they say, okay, this is when my style works well, this is how I can use it. Or I particularly like working with people from the third sector, and they'll come in for something like, oh, I want to learn project management for this charity that I'm doing, and we'll do a load of skills, and they say, oh my goodness, I've just realized how I can use this with my children to be a better parent, or I've just realized how I can solve this conflict at home or in my friendship group. So I particularly enjoy as well when people take the skills of leadership, they came for their professional life, but actually it's going into their personal life, because the two do relate. And even though we say let's leave our work in the office, and that should be the case, the skills go across both. And I get so much joy out of hearing people explain how it's helped them personally as well.
Yeah, life skills. Yeah, that's a good point. So you're doing this with all these different people. Where do you see the company going, Gemma? I mean, it seems like it's going strength to strength. You're happy. Is there anything you want to specifically go towards, or is it just a case of just keep branching out?
So I'm really interested in positive psychology and well-being. I've already been moving in that direction over the last 2 years anyway, but I would like to do more in that area, because I think when I first started, I was still interested in well-being, but there wasn't any market for it. People were kind of, no, we want you to come in and teach us professional skills, and it's just got to be all business. Whereas now people are realizing that, oh, we actually need to look after people's well-being so that they're good at their work.
Yeah.
Like, you know what you're doing, come in. So I really want to explore that. But I'm also, I'm not much of a goal setter, in the sense that I'm quite happy with the here and now. I have a direction, but not any milestones, because a piece of advice that I got when I was teaching is the plan is what you do when all else fails.
Yeah,
Fair enough, have a rough plan, but
yeah.
sometimes by sticking to something too rigidly, you limit yourself. And most of the directions that my business has gone in were just random opportunities rather than anything I was out looking for. Yeah. So I want to do a bit more international work. I really enjoy that. I've got a project coming up over the next few months that will be working with graduates across Europe and Asia on like a really detailed leadership program for them to take into their volunteering. I'll still be working with refugees in their like community development projects. So I really like stuff with the community. I'd like to do more in the education sector, but it's a bit of a hard one to get into, because schools are so, schools have got their own ecosystem. But in the long run, I'd really like to see educational approaches changing to be a bit more, I guess, emotional intelligence based, more social skills based. I think we're a long way off that yet. So, that might be a 5 to 10 years down the line.
I think, and that's interesting what you say, because I think it's definitely getting better, and the world's evolving, and Britain's evolving. I speak to quite a few coaches and people like yourself, and in America, when I speak to them in America, you have a therapist, a coach. That's just your day-to-day, the same as a dentist, doctor. Over here, it's like, I'm not paying for that. I don't need that. But I do think it's getting a lot better now. And I think, like you say, educational-wise, hopefully they'll get, we never used to talk about mental health 5, 6 years ago. So it's definitely going in the right direction. How long it takes is another thing, isn't it?
And how it's done as well. I mean, one of the joy of teaching was you get to go around so many schools and see what everybody's up to. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
And one of the things you can do for mental health is meditation. Mindfulness and meditation done well is really good for boosting your serotonin levels. It's good for grounding you, reducing stress. And so learning to pay attention to the body and do deep breathing is excellent. And some schools were doing that, and others were sort of doing it, but they bought a resource pack and they didn't know what to do with it. So a room full of kids are kind of saying, right, now let's do giraffe breathing, and they're doing all this. And okay, and now it's whale breathing. And they're so busy acting out actions that they're not doing the breathing. Yeah, they're having fun, but this is not what it's for.
Yeah.
And you're not actually using this the way it's supposed to be. So, you know, a difficulty is also, do people understand why they're doing what they're doing and how it works? Because if you don't know how it works, you might change it in such a way that it breaks. So that's another difficulty really with well-being, is how do we take the expertise and use it well? Because there's a lot of people out there doing things that actually go a bit off the track, and it might make you feel good temporarily as a placebo effect, but it's not working because it's been altered too much.
And I think one of the good things is, one of the positive things is, at least we're asking the question. And you know, and if kids are talking about it and what is this, at least that's a start in the right direction. Like you say, there's a lot of information out there, and it's which one's right to do for you. But and
the for you is interesting as well, because like there's so many different types of mindfulness. Some people will try one and go, oh, I didn't like that, but actually there's been silent, which some people find very difficult. There's having a thought in mind, there's doing stuff with the body, you can do movement, and so there's until you've given each category a fair shot, don't discount it.
I'm trying more this year, but just my head is just a nightmare because I'm a creative and just got that many things. And of course, the first thing you think is, when you're like, right, I'm not going to think of anything, you think of everything. It's a pain in the ass.
So you might be better off doing more of like a doodling mindfulness of, okay, what's in my head? And you know, so there's trying to block out thoughts works for some people, but for others, that's provides pressure and anxiety, but there's so many things there. If that's what you're like, notice them, capture them, and then use that as your process. So
definitely,
I think it's good to be aware of the different styles out there, and you've got to find one that works for you.
Definitely. I always ask my guests for a bit of advice, so maybe it's the best bit of advice you've had or you could give. Have you got any advice that you could that you think of?
I feel like we've sort of touched on it. I like
we've touched on quite a bit.
The plan is what you do when all else fails. I really like, and that's been really important for me, because it was really important work-wise. Of, you know, I'll plan a day of training, but actually, if the people I'm training say, "Oh, actually, can we spend longer on this, or can you do on this?" Never mind the plan. Let's do what it is you want. So there's that side of it, but also I'm 32, and for the longest time I had this message that, okay, as a woman you're supposed to be having kids by this age and getting married by this age, and society provides these plans for you. And it's a bit, you know, touches on, I guess, what we were saying with Love Island and social media. You know, don't worry about a plan. Life will kind of take care of itself if you're looking after the moment. And so you can have a direction, but don't set things in stone, because actually doing that can put too much pressure on you, and then you end up stressed and not enjoying the journey. So, you know, take things easy and ask yourself, is the day-to-day valuable and fulfilling? And if so, the direction will take care of itself a little bit more.